Hey, welcome back. A really fun set of sessions that we have had this morning. I kept toggling back and forth, and I couldn't decide whether I was more fascinated by what was happening in the group talking about building a culture of healthcare, over to what was happening with using smart things to build smart things. And just really fascinating stuff about the practical applications of some of this technology to marketing. And I am so excited to welcome our keynote, Gretchen O'Hara from Microsoft, who has been such a key partner to us in the Future of Work initiative, really looking to the future to make our region a more inclusive and innovative economy. And Gretchen is an obviously passionate advocate for driving innovation and using technology to make the world more sustainable, both from an environmental perspective, but also from a human perspective. And her team, particularly Lena Fang, has just been integral in really seeding an investment in our community and our region that I think is being replicated in other places, but has been so impactful for us here in Louisville. Really excited to have you. So I want to hand over to you, Gretchen O'Hara.
Thank you, Ben. I'm so honored to be here. And as Ben mentioned, I am extremely passionate about the work that we are doing here together in Louisville, and couldn't be more thrilled to spend a few minutes to go a little bit deeper on what that opportunity looks like. So thank you again. And thank you, Louisville, for being a participant of the Future of Work Summit. Maybe I'll jump back in and start with just what's happening today, in the market. We're seeing the speed of innovation, and it's accelerating. And over the last 2 decades, technology has transformed really everything from the way that we work, how we live, how we play. And in addition to this massive speed of innovation that we're seeing, we're really on the brink of a disruption that's just as great as last year's sudden shift to remote work. And that really is the move to hybrid work. And this is a blended model, if you will, where some employees will return to the workplace, others will continue to work from home, and trying to understand how that is all going to come together to continue to serve customers over time. We're all learning as we go, just to be fully transparent, but we do know 2 things. We know that flexible and remote work are going to be here to stay, and the talent landscape really has fundamentally shifted. And so that's like a good point on the bright side of the shift to remote work. It's really widened the talent marketplace. And in fact, Ben and I were talking a little bit earlier around how I work at Microsoft headquarters, but I'm sort of out in a different environment right now, and I have some flexibility to be able to do that, being just as productive as I would be necessarily being in the office. And when you see that talent marketplace expand, remote job postings are certainly expanding. We see that with LinkedIn has seen an increase of 5 times that postings for remote work in the pandemic. And people are starting to take notice of that. 46% of remote workers that we've surveyed are planning to move to a new location this year because they can work remotely. And so it's giving some people some flexibility that they no longer have to be at their desk, at their house. They can be in their community to really expand their career. And it's going to have a profound effect on that talent landscape, which we'll talk a little bit about. Combine that now with the technology perspective, and we're seeing entire industries disrupted with software as a service. And so if you think about the lodging industry with Airbnb, if you think about transportation with Uber and Lyft, transforming retail with Walmart, these are all companies that are looking more and more like a software company in the way that they operate versus traditional equivalents. And so if you take that transformation that's happening across every industry, sort of every company, artificial intelligence or AI is now going to take that shift to a brand new set of heights. AI offers a completely really new way of creating software and services because AI learns, and it's being instead of being explicitly programmed, it can sense the world around us, and it can extract knowledge from it. It can reason on top of that, and it can do it at lightning speeds that we've never been able to see before. And so when you think about software being transformed in every industry, AI is now the transforming essentially every business and how we engage with our customers, how we develop products, how we optimize our operations, and ultimately how we empower our employees to be more productive, happier, working together and working ultimately with their customer. And so with every innovation that we're seeing now, we are one step closer essentially to a world where every organization will be an AI powered organization. And I think, this week summit is a great example of what we're all coming, together to go do. So if you think about, our Microsoft CEO, Satya Nadella, there was a famous quote that I love that he talks about, we've seen 2 years worth of digital transformation in only 2 months. And from that remote teamwork and learning to sales, customer service to critical cloud infrastructure and security, we're working alongside our customers. We really want to help them adapt and stay open for business in a world that now has become remote everything. And, that is something that is a fundamental shift. And so what we all have top of mind, and I'm sure you all have top of mind, is the impact of COVID and what that's going to look like on our business and how we're going to see ourselves moving forward, in the community. And so I think it's important to understand that you have this influx of rapid acceleration of emerging, technologies and its impact on the U.S. market and also on society and how it is actually redefining that landscape. And how do we then understand what that redefinition looks like so that we can respond accordingly? And so, as I had mentioned earlier, when people ask me, hey, how do we think that impact of COVID-19 crisis is happening? I think some interesting, pieces of note here. 79% of CIOs will agree with the notion that COVID-19 pandemic is that forcing function that is really encouraging them to digitally transform and going to the public cloud even faster maybe than had been originally planned. And as I talk to AI-powered organizations across the U.S., certainly that also is making that drastic change because it is the way that's going to help be able to do that response. But the massive shift is impacting the skills. So we talk about here at this conference, what are the skills are really needed for the future? And not all of society is benefiting from this digital transformation. In fact, 37% of rural Americans don't even have access to broadband at home. And so as a result of that, there's just some uncertainty. 8 in 10 Americans are saying that the future of our nation is a significant source of stress. And so we're facing this unprecedented time where we have these incredible challenges that range from how do we come out of the global economic crisis to the skills, quite frankly, that we're going to need to have collectively together in the recovery, ensure that we don't broaden the digital divide even further. So we've got to bring people together. We've got to support the underserved and underrepresented communities and ensure that everyone can flourish in this global recovery. And so this is sort of the premise of this partnership with Louisville and the public sector on how we can address that. I talk a lot about opportunity around digitization, and I think that you will see that that is happening in every corner. In fact, the World Economic Forum is estimating that we'll see about 100 trillion over the next 10 years that will come from digitization across the industries. But this opportunity certainly comes with challenges that we need to be very aware of because it is accelerating the need for new jobs and new skills, and that we are projecting about 27% of the roles will be new with new technology, and actually 54% of all employees, regardless of where you are, will require some type of reskilling or upskilling to stay competitive in the new normal. And so when you think about the virtual post-pandemic world And the reality of increasing the digital divide, we have got to make sure that we are not leaving communities further behind. And so when you think about some of the work that's been out there, Deutsche Bank did some research, 76% of Black and African Americans and 62% of Hispanics could just be completely shut out or underprepared by opportunities by 2045, just because of technology access skills and connectivity. And so this digitization trend, combined with the COVID environment that we have, is creating unprecedented growth for virtual remote education. We've seen that, of course, in our education system today. But access to broadband and the quality of remote instruction is just very different depending on your location, depending on the community, your demographics. And these are all factors that create, our challenges with learning loss. And how many students, that are seeing school closures, how many students are seeing not instruction at all. And we know that the loss among low income and Black and Hispanic students in particular, 86% of Black and African American students are currently receiving that low quality or no education, and can see almost 10 months of learning loss during this pandemic. And so when you combine the need for remote learning, but to ensure that we have equitable access to education, combine that with the loss of jobs that we were talking through, this just becomes this perfect storm. And we're seeing women, for example, are almost 2 times more vulnerable in this crisis than men in terms of job loss, and getting very hard hit, especially in areas such as hospitality. And then if you think about this job loss coming through with the pandemic, women of color is even in a more dire situation. In fact, in December's job report last December, 154,000 women of color lost their jobs, and that represented almost 100% of the job losses in that month of December. And so these systemic inequities, we've got to look at them. They've been in existence, but over the past year, everything has been drastically exacerbated, and it's really important that we look at the racial and gender disparities across our education, our economics, and overall employment opportunities, and do something about that. And the tragedy of Breonna Taylor, has brought a reckoning of these systemic inequities within the city of Louisville, as well as nationwide. And it is important that we have these conversations, that we can do something about it. And so what are we doing in recognition of these systemic inequities? Microsoft's approach to really developing skilling programs has to focus on that equity piece and closing the digital divide, and making sure that we are reaching into underserved communities, and really create a level playing field, and create that level playing field for all. And that has to do with digital skills. It has to do with making sure that we are committing to keeping local communities at pace, such as the great partnership we're doing here in Louisville. And so we came together seeing an opportunity to upskill local workforce, particularly in underserved communities. And this is something that we feel is so important. Ben and I were talking about a little bit earlier, that it has to happen at the community level. And while we can provide global and national programs, Microsoft's commitment is to get deep into the community to ultimately help to provide that balanced playing field and help with the local workforce. And so if we think about what our goal will be, it is about economic empowerment, it's economic mobility, and we'll do that by closing that digital divide and creating those skills for high demand jobs, so that we not have an employment issue, but we actually can fill those high demand jobs that are going to be seen over the next 3 years. And so our vision on these skilling is really to become a sustainable initiative. And it's not a one and done, and it generates economic and community impact. It's targeted at the community members who are susceptible to job placement, susceptible to unemployment. And we will address a holistic approach to address this. And our goal is very ambitious. We have goals in Louisville. We also have goals across the US to reach 15 million of our community over the next 3 years, to be able to drive this skills initiative. And we know we can't really do it alone. We realize and recognize that closing the skills gap and driving this inclusive economic culture and recovery is something that we have to do through technology partnerships, and we have to do it together. And so as a result, we look at an ecosystem to address that between technical companies, employers, communities, our government, and workforce agencies. We each have a role to play here. And when we can come together in this ecosystem approach, we can make a much, much bigger impact. And so when you look, for example, in Louisville, Microsoft has really built that extensive ecosystem to deliver skills programs in communities that are in need. And we've done this together holistically with our government, the learning partners that you'll see here, corporate partners that we are deep partnership with, to really have a holistic approach to addressing skilling in localities and extending our reach and impact to really activate and galvanize the community and the industries. Our goal is to reach key workforce populations and underserved communities that are affected. It might be that they need high digital skills, but quite frankly, it might just be moderate or even low digital skills to stay in the jobs that are being required with this perfect storm that we talked about post-COVID environment. And so we want to make sure that everyone here through this program can have the career trajectory regardless of demographic or economic background, and that we invest and build in the talent of Louisville to support this new type of work environment that we're seeing here. And so with the alliance that we have and the coalition of our education, corporate, and government, nonprofits, we have this mission to really increase digital fluency and develop new technical skills and technical talent that will help build the community of the future in a post-COVID world. And our plan is to have that holistic engagement with Louisville. We want to develop those digital skills. We want to create that economic opportunity. And at the end of the day, we have got to focus on filling jobs and making sure that that talent we're investing in here in the community can be applied in the community and that we're seeing real job growth. So I talked very quickly around sort of the opportunity, the change, how AI is sort of changing the need and quite frankly, the urgency for us to be able to reach our potential through the digital skills that are required. But there are things that we can all do. So in closing, I ask that you, your business, your community, that you lift others up. And if each of you could take a part, we could have 1,000 times the impact in this effort. If you think about just 10 people in this session, and you think about 10 new ideas and 10 actions that we can take around this coalition, the amplification of our impact is going to be profound. And we're excited to do that. And so I think it's always important when you listen to these keynotes and think about what that's going to mean for you, what that's going to mean for your company. I sort of ask us to think about how are you in creating this inclusive culture and a real true sense of belonging, making sure that we have the people that are equipped in this sort of new digitized economy. And then create and develop economic opportunities. It's about access, it's about opportunity, it's making sure that we have that diverse pipeline and that we're starting to close that digital divide so that we have those opportunities here together. And the last thing I ask each and every one of you to think about is really what's your personal commitment to change that will help us increase that diversity in tech. We know that the digital economy will require this type of work. What do we do? What can we all do to make an effort? And when we discuss that with our entrepreneurs, to the enterprises, with public policy, our personal decisions, I know that we will be able to achieve our goals here. I have a lot of confidence in the work and the coalition that I just showcased with you. This summit is a great example of bringing that thought leadership together on how we can all address this together. And I really believe that we can achieve these goals to close the digital divide, create gender and racial equity, and ensure that we are competing in Louisville for economic prosperity over time. So with that, what will your 10 actions be? I'd love to hear from you. Please connect with me on LinkedIn, on Twitter. Let's continue to have this conversation. I will take and listen to all of your ideas, and how do we continue to grow together as a community, and ultimately across the globe. So thank you very much for today. Thank you about the opportunity for connection, and please, let's stay connected, let's network, let's learn from each other. It takes really a village, and the more that we join that conversation and make those commitments, we will really succeed together. So thank you very much.
Gretchen, thank you so much. These are really a lot of great takeaways in what you said. And particularly appreciate you saying Breonna Taylor's name and acknowledging that that is a driving force for what has happened in our community, and something that we really need to be investing in nationally and locally. That is at the heart of what we are doing, and the work that you are doing together. Lena Feng on your team, with the very beginning, showed this incredibly powerful visual where she talked about the jobs that were going to require these AI skills, and then how do we really make that investment so that the talent pipeline is there as those jobs are being created. So we're not over-promising and we're not under-delivering, but we're really doing these things in tandem. And I think you've just highlighted so much of what needs to happen to make that work. Alicia McLean on the Future of Work team talks a lot about the idea of tequity. And as the population, it needs to be reflected in the people that are doing these innovations, because that's whose problems are going to get solved. So thank you again for bringing such enthusiasm and a national spotlight to the work that's happening here in Louisville and then across the South and Midwest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben, and thank you, everyone, and enjoy Future of Work Summit.
All right.
Please join the
conversation.
conversation.
Seeing everyone in the other sessions.
All right. Thank you.